Hey YouTube, what's happening? What's up? It's your girl Raven talking. I'm coming back at you live with another video. So anyways, in this video, I want to direct this towards the antis, the people who are, the so-called feminists who call themselves being opposed to sex workers in the sex worker industry. Anyways, my question to you is this. If y'all are truly feminists, why are y'all in favor of a law that basically regulates women's morals and sexuality? You know, the very same thing that the feminist movement was supposed to be trying to get women away from. Why would y'all be, this is the same type, guys don't get subjected to that, to moral and sexual regulation. So why would y'all be in favor of a law like that? Please tell me. On top of that, why are y'all in favor of a law that basically allows for women to be open to exploitation, rape, and abuse by cops? The very same people who, where the term second rape came from. And y'all know what second rape is, right? That's the term that's used to describe when police officers blame the victim for being raped because of her morals. Why would you want to give people who already look down on women and don't have any respect for women, a wide, huge, amount of control over our bodies, by judging us for our morals? These are the same people who, as my father, who was a cop back in the 80s and 90s, once told me, used the term crime with a friendly weapon to describe rape. Why would you want these people to have control over your body and use your morals to justify arresting you? Can't y'all see the huge disadvantage, the huge dehumanization, the huge abuse that can potentially, and that does in fact take place, because of that law. On top of that, another thing I want to bring up is, why are y'all in favor of this law that the Catholic Church, the same patriarchal influence that's responsible for our oppression, is in favor of? Why would you be in favor of something that regulates our morals and our sexuality? Alongside the same people who are opposed to us, when it comes down to abortion, and uses the term, well, we're trying to save women from themselves by telling us what our morals should be. Doesn't that sound eerily familiar to the same excuse that they use to try to justify the criminalization of sex work? I'll tell you what it all comes down to. It all comes down to this. The fact is that at the end of the day, men want to have control over women's bodies for their reproductive sexual benefit. That's what it really comes down to. That's why they're quick to call a woman a slut, for sleeping around with a whole lot of guys, while calling a man a stud for sleeping around with a whole lot of women. That's why you got rape victim blame. That's why street harassment, which is a hell of a lot more insidious, and which really does bring about crimes like stalking and, a lot of, femicide against women. That's why that's perfectly legal, while on the other hand, prostitution is not. Because after all, how dare you decide that you want to sell your body rather than give it away to guys for free? And what do guys say at the end of the day? What do guys say? They say that, why buy the cow when I can milk it for free? So in other words, they hold, sluts even, in a stance, with less respect than they do, with less esteem than they do whores. Why would y'all think that, allowing guys, men, to regulate your bodies and your sexuality and your morals like the Taliban, why would y'all think that's liberating? And why would y'all think that that's freeing for y'all? Can't y'all see the objectification in that? Really what it comes down to is this. Guys don't want to have to get our consent or have to pay for it in order to get it. That's why you got all of these little loopholes, and that's why street harassment is still perfectly legal, while on the other hand, these guys are going around saying that, we want to criminalize prostitution for y'all protection, Notice that they're, again, just like they did back in archaic times, how they're telling women, how guys want to tell women what's best for us, by regulating our morals and our bodies, really for their pleasure and for their benefit. If anybody can't see the paradox in that, if they can't see the contradictions, then I feel sorry for you, because you're obviously a fool. You know, now to slam some of y'all myths about prostitution, you know, I know some of y'all like to promote the notion that, you know, because he's buying, then all of a sudden that means he owns you. Bullshit, because if somebody's buying you, I mean, then that means that you're just a soul, you know, you're just solely owned by that one person. It's in a sense no different than gold digging. The fact is that, you know, clients do not buy us. And just because, you know, really what it comes down to is that they're buying our sexual services. No different than a mechanic. We merely use our, you know, sex workers merely use our bodies, whether it's as a stripper or a porn star, to sell those sexual services. You know, and it's no different than a mechanic who decides to use his hands, his body, to implement, you know, his duties as a mechanic. It's no different. It's, you know, pretty much the same thing. And also another thing I want to bring up is that just because somebody is, you feel it, you know, just because somebody is buying you doesn't mean that they have power over you. Now, after all, and again, they're not buying us, they're buying our sexual services. Now, take this for instance, a pimp, for instance. You know, pimps, you know, don't have any money power. You know, it's their hoes who bring in the money. But who has the ultimate power? It's the pimp. And notice how they get glorified in our patriarchal culture, while the hoes, who y'all consider to be the victims, get slammed. I mean, y'all don't notice this? You know, really what it goes to show is that power, you know, isn't brought. You know, power isn't based on, you know, you having money. That's not what power is about. Power is being able to own your mind. And that's what pimps do. They own the women's minds. Even though the women are the ones supporting him and bringing in the cheddar, bringing home the cheddar. You know, same thing. You know, for instance, my father, you know, my father was the breadwinner in the family, but my mama, who controlled his mind, basically controlled his pocketbook as well. So it goes to show you that, you know, power isn't based on money, you know, or having control over somebody through money. It's really based on manipulation, being able to manipulate that person's minds. Because I can't tell you how many times, you know, I've had power over people before in the past, not maliciously, but just, you know, intellectually, you know, on a rather mutual basis, even though I didn't have any, you know, buying power over them, even though, you know, they weren't dependent on me for money. You know, like a pimp is dependent upon his hoes. But, you know, because I had the mind, you know, had the person's mind, I, in a sense, they were, you know, addicted to me. And that's what it's about, and that's what it comes down to. So anyways, to all of the, you know, so-called, you know, feminists out there, I just want to say that, you know, our oppression as women lies with them wanting to control our sexuality and our morality for their, you know, reproductive benefit, and all of these little contradictions here and there. You know, you can't be a slut, you can't be a hoe, you know, you have to be a respectable woman. All of these are designed to justify guys having unwanted access to our bodies against our wills. You know, for instance, I had an argument a while back with a woman who worked for the William Morris agency, who said, "Oh, I'm all for," you know, she contacted me, and you know, I met her at a hotel, and you know, she was like, "Oh, you know, what cause are you in favor of?" And you know, so when I told her that, you know, it's not for Save the Children in Africa, a nice little friendly, safe cause like that, but rather, you know, it's for the avocation for sex workers, she was just like, well, you know, I have nothing against it, but, you know, whatever happens to them, happens to them. Where else do you hear the same thing? Women who get raped, you know, because of what they wore, because of their sexuality, because they were loose women, whether they be whores or sluts. You know, I remember when I got raped in the Bronx, up in New York City, for instance. I was working at J.P. Morgan Chase at the time. But because they identified me as a sex worker because of what I wore, they used that to justify what happened to me. The DA, the so-called detective, female bitch working on my case, they used it to justify what happened to me. And that's why it's so important that we women recognize that the case for our rights lies with, you know, not allowing, you know, men to control our sexuality and our morals for us, but rather to define ourselves. And really what it all comes down to is, you know, guys pigeonholing us into the whore virgin complex. You know, whereas guys have the sexual freedom to be able to do whatever they want, you know, whereas, you know, they're not subjected to these same things that they subject us to, these same double standards. Women are not allowed to be self-determining beings like guys. We're not allowed to determine our own sexuality, our own sensuality, our own morality for us. You know, in other words, we have to rely on guys for that. We're told that we're we're unrespectable women, you know, if we decide to set up our own, you know, sexual destinies, that we're unrespectable women because we're sluts, because we're whores, because we sleep around with a whole lot of guys. You know, as a matter of fact, wasn't that long ago that women were called sluts for enjoying sex? That, you know, at one point in history, it was considered improper for women to enjoy sex, and we were supposed to enjoy it solely for the enjoyment of the guy, that we were only supposed to do it for the guy. You know, that's why you got these dildo heads, you know, out now who, you know, argue against prostitution by saying, oh, well, why are you doing it for the money? Why aren't you doing it for this? You know, really what it comes down to is they want to dominate your brain and your mind because they feel entitled to your pussy against your will even, and they feel like, you know, you should be doing it only for them and for their reasons only and not for yourself. And that's what it really comes down to. And we need to start recognizing that, you know, the point of our oppression lies with guys wanting to control, you know, our sexuality, our morality. You know, that's why women get blamed for rape still, you know, because of what we wore, for being unrespectable women. And it all, you know, runs concomitant to each other, because, you know, after all, when you start pointing the fingers at one woman and saying, well, you know, because she's a whore, because she's not a virgin, she's not deserving of, you know, of her rights, you know, she doesn't have a right to consent, her right to consent should be taken away from her, you know, that sets us down a path of a, you know, rather deadly domino effect like spiral, where, you know, all women start to get, you know, justified, you know, all women start to have justified against us, you know, things like rape, you know, things like sexual assault, you know, sexual harm, molestation, you know, all because of our morals, you know. And, you know, as I say to that lady, remember, you know, at one time wearing short miniskirts and stuff was considered a form of softcore porn. You know, porn is considered to be, you know, no different than prostitution, you know, even though, I mean, you take your clothes off, even if you're not taking your clothes off, it's still about titillating, you know, our sexuality. And, you know, the minute guys are, you know, the minute somebody says, well, you know, you have no right to your body because of prostitution, then it goes down the domino effect, you know, where they can say just as equally, well, you know, you have no right to your body because of what you wore, because that's immoral. You know, think about the Taliban with that. And, you know, what does that remind you of? That should bring to mind the fact that, you know, any woman can get subjected, you know, to this, you know, type of abusive litmus test that determines your worth based on, you know, how respectable you are in the eyes of guys and the eyes of men. You know, while allowing guys, you know, to benefit at our expense, because after all, think about it. When it comes down to prostitution, 70%, I mean, I take that back, 9% of the arrests are of women. While on the other hand, only 10% of the men go to jail. So really, all in all, who's the real victim? And who's really the one suffering? And think about it, what's really the crime being committed here? You know, where we're being perceived as, I mean, where prostitutes are being perceived as both a victim and a criminal at the same time. I mean, what? You're selling pleasure because you're not giving your body away for free to guys on their own terms, like they feel you should, like they feel like you're entitled to give them. I mean, after all, like guys like to say, you know, why buy the cow when we can milk it for free? Anyway, so all my sisters out there, thank y'all for listening. Hopefully y'all have taken everything that I've said in and to heart, and hopefully, you know, sex worker, radical feminist, firefighter, police, women, you know, hopefully, you know, whore, whatever, you know, hopefully we can unite on these issues, because it wasn't always like this for us. You know, think about it. Back in ancient Egypt, which was more of an egalitarian matriarchal culture, whores were highly esteemed in that society. And, you know, boy, you know, what a major fall from grace we've suffered ever since the rise of the patriarchal, you know, Eurocentric, you know, misogynist Christianity and Western worldview of, you know, religious worldview, Catholic worldview of women and our sexuality. You know, again, what's the crime? Just curious. Anyways, thank y'all all for listening and have a wonderful day.